So what we want to do is cultivate cultivate a capacity for kindness. So, close your eyes. Take a few moments to breathe in and breathe out. Chat. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanogia. And just a reminder today that although I am a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken as medical advice. So if y'all have a concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. Welcome, everyone, to the Twitch commencement speech. So today we're going to be doing a couple of things. I guess I'm giving a commencement speech. It's kind of weird because usually when people give commencement speeches, they're invited to give commencement speeches. It's a little bit unclear if anyone has invited me to do this, or if this is just a product of my own hubris. But the truth is that a lot of people are graduating in our community, and I'm not sure how many of y'all are getting commencement speeches. I don't know if y'all are attending stuff or like what's going on. But this is a speech for you, okay? So, yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. Commence with the hubris right now. So, yeah, I think that, the world is changing. And so everything is virtual. So I guess we're just going to go ahead and give a commencement speech. So first of all, shout out to everyone who is, should we get started? Can we get started? Class of 2011. Your finals are in 2 weeks. I see that 11 doesn't have one, doesn't have a degree, or doesn't have a commencement speech. Outfit check. I think we're okay here. Looking good. This, by the way, is not available in our merch store. I'm sorry. I know that everyone's asking about the merch that we wear, but unfortunately, this is not really available. Yeah, Zora Zero, bro has a tux on. I wasn't sure what else to wear. So I looked for my old cap and gown, which, has been, I graduated from Tufts University School of Medicine in 2014. So that one I haven't seen in 8 years. I graduated from the University of Texas at Austin in 2006. So that I haven't seen in 16 years. So tux it is, right? Because we do things a little bit differently here on Twitch. So shall we get started? Is Dr. K wearing shorts? Isn't that optimistic? Isn't that optimistic? You guys think that I'm wearing shorts? I don't think so. You guys ready for this? No, I'm wearing the full tux, dude. You guys see this? The only thing that's a little bit weird, which I won't go into, lest I be banned, is I am actually barefoot. Right? So, no cummerbund? No. No, dude. Close. Close. Okay. So, shall we go ahead and get started, my friends? Are you all ready? Shall we get started? Okay. So welcome, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to be your commencement speaker for the graduation of the class of 2022. Now, this may seem a little bit strange because maybe you're listening to this commencement speech and you're not actually graduating, but that's okay. And maybe this is a little bit strange because you are graduating, but you already had a different commencement speaker. And that's okay too. Because if you're a part of the class of 2022, it's time to recognize that it's time to start doing things our way. Because the old ways haven't really worked for us. Because let's be honest, the world is kind of going to shit, right? If we look around, what we see are all kinds of problems. So it can start with even the most basic things, like the environment. We have global warming. We have trawling going on in our oceans. You know, the wealth inequality is increasing. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Even things like the information age, which we'd sort of ushered in this like information age, which the advent of technology, is now becoming the misinformation age. So many things that we've relied on have started to kind of go to hell, right? So much of what we've relied on is like not really working for us anymore. So despite advances in healthcare, we've had a global pandemic over the last 2 years that has taken people's lives, crippled our economies, really questioned the way that we do things, and has left our mental health in shambles as well. And so like stuff just isn't working anymore, right? Like the economy is broke, the climate is broke. Even politics are getting worse and worse. So like we're seeing an increased amount of polarization where politicians are like not even representing the interests of the people anymore. And so like everything seems to kind of be going to hell. And so this is where normally what we used to do is we used to rely on institutions, right? So if we look at something like the environment, who was responsible for that? It's like some institution was responsible for that. Maybe a government, or here in the United States, we have the Environmental Protection Agency, right? They were kind of responsible for that. And in terms of like how to manage this kind of stuff, we used to trust institutions like schools, right? Because schools were supposed to teach us how to do things. That's what we go to school for. But schools are no longer a place of learning. They've become assembly lines at best, or at worst, butcher shops, right? Where people go in, they go in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you have administrators and legal fees and all these kinds of like educational tuition fees and stuff like that, where you graduate 4 years later with a piece of paper and saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And so our institutions aren't really working for us the way that they used to. You know, there used to be a formula for life that we could kind of like follow. And this is sort of what the generation before us had. Or the generation before us, you know, who spoke a lot about hard work and, you know, a respect for each other and sort of like putting in your dues, I think took for granted how much they had given to them. When they inherited the world, the climate was great. When they inherited a world, it was like an age of prosperity. When they inherited the world, it was sort of like things were easy. You could just get a job after going to college, and then you could support an entire family on a single income. But what's happened since that is that inflation has gotten worse, homes have gotten more expensive, education has gotten more expensive, and people have started to get paid relatively less. And so it's like very easy for the generation above us to kind of say like, you know, this is what you should do to succeed. And they laid out all these formulas for us. And those formulas were successful in their day. But what we've seen time and time again is the formulas of the past don't really work for the present. And this is the challenge that the class of 2022 faces, which is, what are y'all supposed to do? Right? Like, what are we supposed to do now? Because the formulas of the past don't really work. In a world where, you know, with the birth of democracy, we had this idea that people could sort of cast their vote and have a voice in what happens in their life. But as we've seen all over the world, despite the fact that we have democratic nations all over the place, the opinions and the voice of the individual person has started to matter less and less and less. And so we're seeing a failure of our institutions. We're seeing a failure of schools to educate, a failure of government to represent the interests of the people. We're even seeing a failure in the realms of scientific advancement. So now what used to happen is that schools and colleges and academic institutions used to be the birthplace of innovation. That's where most of the research was done and where, like, people made discoveries. But now what we're seeing is that innovation is in the hands of business. So we're seeing an explosion of technology and social media, and academia is actually kind of slow to keep up, right? And so what we're starting to see is that the formula that we've been taught is based on a set of assumptions that the generation above us had. The generation above us had this assumption that if you go to college and you get a job and you save diligently and you invest in the stock market, that you'll be okay in life, right? They gave us the formula to be okay. The problem is that that formula relies on certain assumptions, which no longer compute. This is no longer the day that you can just get get a college degree. And I know this sounds kind of despairing because some of y'all are graduating from college. Some of y'all are about to go to college. And so, why are we talking about this? Because I think it's important to understand that the world that you're walking into as the class of 2022 is a little bit different from the world of the past. And so the formula for success has changed. In fact, there is no formula for success. And that's the hard lesson that we've had to learn, which is that if you assumed that if I do A, B, and C, I will end up okay, right? In a world of online dating, they used to sort of say take care of yourself, prioritize yourself, groom yourself, get into shape a little bit, learn how to cook. If you do all of these things and you're a decent human being, you'll be okay. But that's not what the world gets us, right? Because when you match with someone on an online dating app, half of the times it's a bot, and the other half of times it's someone directing you to a different website where you can pay for certain kinds of content. And that's what's happened. The rules of the game have changed. And so how do you manage this if you're a part of the graduating class of 2022, right? Here's Dr. K, talking to you about cynicism and despair. And what do we do about this, right? Because the formulas of the past no longer seem to work. And so it's no surprise that mental health is at an all-time low, because it is. So we sort of know this, that during the pandemic, depression and anxiety got 300% worse, literally 300% worse. We're seeing higher rates of diagnosis of ADHD, of autism spectrum disorder. More people are dying of opioid overdoses than they ever have in the history of the world. More people are incarcerated for marijuana than they have been in the past. Right? So many things are working against us. We're inheriting a world that's fundamentally broken. And so what's the natural idea here? What do we do? How do we kind of deal with this? Because this is what we're getting, right? So the class of 2022, what's the world that you're stepping into? You're now an adult, and you're stepping into a world where the climate is going to hell, the economy is busted. You may be on the brink of financial ruin. Maybe you're sad. Maybe you're despairing. Seems like absolute crap, right? Well, here's the good news, class of 2022. If there is a generation that is equipped to deal with this, it's actually y'all. Because y'all are the generation of misfits. Y'all are the generation of meme lords. Y'all are the generation that adopted your diamond hands, held on the GME, and now Melvin Capital is going out of business. Y'all are the generation that has actually said a great big F you to the world. Y'all are the only generation that can actually fix these problems. Because the generation of the past that grew up when the world was young and there were plenty of natural resources to go around, and the world was not quite as crowded as it was now, where you could kind of slide through things and kind of be okay. That generation couldn't do it. And in fact, it's because of the way that they've shepherded the world that we inherit this thing that they've given us, right? It's the generation of hard work and family values and all these other things that they claim of good stewardship that has created the world that we're born into. And now we've grown up in this world and we're graduating today, so now it's our responsibility. And I say thank God for that. Because if there's one generation who can fix this problem, it's actually y'all. Because y'all are the generation of misfits and meme lords. And when it comes to combating despair, the meme lords are the ones who will lead us to victory. So this is where, I know it sounds kind of weird, but I think we can actually do this. Because things are actually a little bit different from what we expected. We're the generation for whom we were given a formula that doesn't work. And that's actually totally fine, because in order to fix this world, it's not going to be following a formula. It's going to be innovation. It's going to be creativity. And we're the generation that has the highest number of entrepreneurs, the most content creators. You can be an artist and get your music on SoundCloud. You can be an author and you can get published on Amazon. You can be a solo developer and get a game published on Steam. So this is the one time in the world where the barriers that have restrained our individual abilities and creativity are actually at an all-time low. We are literally no longer restrained by geography. We're the first generation of people who is literally not restrained by the concept of space. You can now make a friend across the globe. You can now work in a completely different state, or country for that matter. We're not restrained. Our options for communication are unparalleled. Our options for connection are unparalleled. Even the resources that we have at our fingertips are now like completely mind-boggling. So you can pay for a PhD education, or you can watch some PhD mathematician from India's YouTube channel and get the same damn thing. There's a PhD education at your fingertips. You can learn how to code. You can learn how to cook. You can even learn how to build like brick houses. And all of this information is at your fingertips. We have resources like Khan Academy, which will outperform any teacher that you actually have, who's burnt out and ground to dust in a system that does not allow them to be educators. Right? So the world is kind of going to hell, but we have an unprecedented amount of power and information at our fingertips. The challenge is that in the past, we've always been told that the road to success is to do A, B, C, and D, right? The formula we were given is essentially quest markers for life. And if you played video games nowadays, you know that there's like, they hold your hand, right? They lead you. Okay, here's the first exclamation point. Go there, then go there, then go there, then go there. And then the quest is finished and you get your reward. That's what the generation above us had. We don't have that anymore. We're now playing in an open world sandbox game where you can go wherever you want to and you can do whatever you want to. You can learn quantum mechanics online, or you can sit there and write erotic dinosaur space fan fiction if you care to. You can do anything that you want to in this world in a way that human beings have never been able to do. And that's kind of mind-boggling. And it's actually like devastating. Because how do we manage this, right? Because in the past, this is the subtle thing that we need to understand if you're part of the class of 2022, which is that we've grown up with the assumption that a formula works. But if you really want to take advantage of the world that we live in, if you really want to succeed in the world that we live in, then you can't follow a formula. You have to find your own way in life. And the good news is that you have so many resources at your disposal that you may actually be able to solve the world's problems. In my own small way, which is probably insignificant in the grand scheme of things, I showed up on Twitch and I was like, you know what? Maybe I can help some people with their mental health. And this was something that even now, most of my colleagues don't really understand what I'm doing, right? People will even criticize it. We'll see, was Dr. K doing something good or is Dr. K doing something bad? The point is I've been able to do it now in a way that has not been possible. And so if I can have such a small impact on mental health, imagine what you're capable of. Right? Because you could create the book that inspires people to fix the environment. You could make the game that keeps someone from committing suicide. You could develop the API that fosters connection and allows people to no longer feel lonely and alone in a day and age where we're struggling with diseases of disconnection, right? So you could create the song that inspires someone else to go and do something amazing. You can do actually all of these things. But it's really easy to fall into despair, right? It's really easy to look into the future and say, like, we don't know what's going to happen. It's really easy to look into the future and actually say that the sand in the hourglass is running out. Like, literally, our planet could very well be dying. It may not be able to sustain life anymore in 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. This is a fear. The sand in the hourglass is running out. And so that should drive us into panic, and it generally does. But this is where, once again, if I have faith in a single generation to fix this problem, it's y'all. Because even though the sand in the hourglass is running out, we're a generation of serial procrastinators. And we work our best when, the deadline is tomorrow. And so this is the problem, is that, like, if the sand in the hourglass is running out, like, we're the ones that I want to be in the helm. Because if someone can do it, it's this state of last-minute panic, which y'all thrive in, which is actually going to be what saves this place. And this is a generation that doesn't want to play by the rules, which is actually fantastic because the game is rigged, right? So we are actually what the world needs. We're exactly what the world needs. But it's hard to not give in to despair. So I'd love to share with y'all a couple of very practical tips about how to move forward. The first is take care of yourself, because the world has shown us that they're not going to take care of you. And it's really sad, and we can kind of talk and we can go, oh, it's so sad. But the truth is, you've got to take care of yourself because it's unclear that anyone else actually will. And it's a devastating responsibility, and it's heartbreaking, but it's the absolute truth. So take care of yourselves. Whether that means seeking mental health support, whether that means looking out for your own financial future, whether that means setting limits on a boss or a family member, whatever boundaries you need to draw to take care of yourself is something that you should absolutely do. The second thing that you need to be careful about, or the second piece of advice that I'd give you, is don't give in to despair and don't give in to cynicism. We live in a world now where technology actually propagates the most emotionally despairing content. The most devastating stuff in the world is what gets filtered to the top of our newsfeed, right? Either that or memes. And so be super careful about what kind of personal environmentalism you practice. Where is your despair coming from? What do you actually consume on a daily basis? We've known for a long time about the benefits of like a healthy diet, but what about a healthy mental diet? So be very careful about what you consume on a day-to-day basis. It can be very, very tempting to go down the rabbit hole of an echo chamber. It can be very, very tempting to go to the radical portions, the dark portions of the internet, where everyone agrees with what you agree with. But the good news is that this generation is the most skeptical, right? We have no respect for the generation above us. May have worked for you, okay, boomer. So trust in that piece of yourself. And don't let yourself be a victim to all of the influences of social media. So be very, very careful about what you consume on a daily basis. Because if you aren't, the road to despair is something that you're going to have, a one-way ticket down. So be very careful about how you spend your time, who you spend your time with, and what kind of media you consume. The third thing to think a little bit about is that if you believe in something in this world, run with it. So this is a generation that I've seen that it's actually dreamed the biggest, because we've seen that success is actually possible, right? There are kids that, grew up watching video games and have said that I want to play this video game as a career. And that's actually possible. We have people who have wanted to write books and have sat down and actually written books and published them and become best-selling author. We even have, different kinds of musical artists that stream on Twitch that started small and blew up. So dream big, class of 2022, because this is the one chance that you're going to have. This is the one generation that is going to have the best actual options of letting your dream come true. And this is something that's very easy to not realize when we look to things like social media and stuff like that, and we see like signs of despair and ruin everywhere. The problem is that the successes rarely rise to the top. But it's my firm belief that you should first and foremost dream big. Because things that you'll be capable of in this world, like, you have no idea. We have single people who have made video games, right? Like, from start to finish, the graphics, the music, the level design, everything has been made by a single person. You now have tools at your fingertips to drag and drop RPGs, right? There's RPG Maker, and you can just like literally make an RPG. So there's so much stuff at your disposal that if you're not careful about what influences you have on your mind, will lead you to despair. But this is the most creative generation ever. This is the generation that actually has the option for a creative outlet to affect the rest of the world. And the last thing that I'd say is don't give up your personal responsibility. So this is where, if we listen to the voice of despair, what it manifests in a couple of different ways. It puts on a few different masks. So the voice of despair will say things like, it's not enough. Or it'll say things like, it won't matter. Or it'll say things like, don't bother. But be very careful about that voice of despair. Because if you give in to that voice, it'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the world has become the way that it has because people have given up on stewardship, right? They've said someone else is going to fix it. Oh, it doesn't matter. Someone else will fix it. We'll figure something out. We'll develop some new technology to fight climate change. You know, other people, oh, the government will take care of them if we sort of like gamble their pension money away. It's a lack of stewardship that has got us into this problem. And this is when the human mind sees a problem of catastrophic size, it automatically says, don't bother, or it won't be enough. But this is the truth of the matter, is that no snowflake believes it's responsible for the avalanche, right? It's a handful of posts on Wall Street Bets in which someone said, someone is short selling GameStop, and I'm going to buy it, and I think I should hold it. And then other people join in, and they buy, and they hold. And suddenly, like, this is a thing. Someone showed up one day and is like, I'm going to stream a video game. And then someone else started doing it. And then someone else started doing it. And then Twitch was born. And someone was like, I really like playing video games. I'm going to compete. I'm going to be the best gamer in this sport in the world. And then someone else said the same thing. And a third person said it. And a fourth person said it. And thus was esports born. So don't underestimate what you're actually capable of. Don't underestimate what the power of personal stewardship can accomplish. So you can look at a problem like climate change and you can say, I can't fix that. It's that kind of attitude that has gotten into this place, gotten us into this mess in the first place. You may not be able to fix climate change, but you know what you can absolutely do is plant a tree. You know what you can absolutely do is post that on social media. Hashtag plant a tree. Right? You may look to the world and you may say, oh my God, mental health is at an all-time low. Suicidal thinking is at an all-time high. Depression has gotten worse. Anxiety has gotten worse. Oh my God. Everything is so full of despair. And you can actually support someone around you. You can have a conversation on Discord. You can talk to a friend. You can support someone. Right? You can respond to someone's cry for help in this empty, barren wasteland known as the internet. And you'd be amazed at what you're capable of. So part of the problem is that we're all confused by this bias of big problems with big solutions. Because what do we see? What floats to the top of our news feeds and our social media feeds? This person has been planting trees for 28 years and has planted 10,000 trees. And you look at that and you say, I can't do that. I'm lazy. I can't plant 10,000 trees. So don't even bother planting a single one. So don't underestimate what you're capable of, because at the end of the day in this world, there's only one thing that you can control. And there's only one thing that you are ultimately responsible for, and that's yourself. And it's because we're a generation who has been led to believe that we are insignificant. We've been led to believe that our voice doesn't matter. We've been led to believe that the deck has stacked against us. And the moment that we accept that, the moment that we believe that the deck is stacked against us and there's no point in trying, that's the moment at which we lose the battle. That's the moment that we lose the war. So don't give up, despite all the negative stuff, because this is seriously, like, this is an unprecedented time in humanity where geography is no longer a thing. Not a big deal, right? You can move to a different part of the country, find a small place to live, and work remotely. Like, that's pretty cool. You can write books, you can create music, you can do all kinds of things. You can learn how to code on the internet. You can learn how to cook on the internet. You can learn how to do so many things. So many people learned to play instruments and learned to bake bread during the pandemic. So don't give up on yourself, because ultimately that's going to be what results in the world going to hell. So at the end of the day, there's a lot wrong with the world, right? The economy is a mess. We're seeing unprecedented levels of inflation. You've got some guy in a tux talking to you in 2022, giving you a commencement speech, even though you may have never invited him to do that. The world is a weird place, right? Healthcare is all screwed up. We're seeing wealth inequality. We're seeing polarization of like political views. No one actually like cares to talk about politics anymore. It's just slamming each other on Twitter time and time and time again. The climate is going to hell. The economy is going to hell. Politics is going to hell. Even gaming is going to hell. Have you all seen microtransactions? My goodness. Who's going to fix this stuff? The answer is you. You're the only one who can. And like, why do I believe that? Y'all are, the mental health is so bad. Oh, kids don't want to work nowadays. You're damn right. It's because kids don't want to work that they'll find the most efficient solutions. This is the laziest generation. Yeah, that's who I'm going to put my money on. Because if this is the laziest generation, the hardest working generation is the one that got us here. So laziness is going to be our way forward. You don't want to work 40 hours a week? Fantastic. Figure out how to fix the world in 20. So you're the generation that's going to do it. You're the generation that's the most skeptical. You don't accept things that are told to you. You don't accept the formula. We've even sort of, stepped away from religion, which terrifies a lot of people because we've learned how to think for ourselves. So that's good because like them thinking for us is not working. Right? We're a generation that is so sad. And thank God we have memes, because memes are going to be the only thing that we can use to fight cynicism and despair. We have ways of communication, and the last and certainly not least is time is running out. But we are at our best when we procrastinate. So the world is going in the wrong direction. And who can turn it around? Y'all can, class of 2022. So congratulations. And now it's time to get to work. Thank you very much. Yeah, let's go. Seriously. Because they ain't going to do it for us. We got to do it ourselves. And now, in the history of commencement speeches, we're going to innovate further. And what we're going to do now is ask questions to the audience. Because this is something that we can do now too. We have an unprecedented ability to communicate. So who's got questions? Let's go. Yeah, Q&A after a commencement speech. Ever heard of that? Haven't? That's because we're innovating it right now. We can do that. We can do things our way. Why are you wearing a suit? Warm Lava Zero. First of all, this is not a suit. This is a tux. Okay, let's understand that difference. And secondly, why am I wearing a suit? Because I fucking feel like it. Here's the thing that I want y'all to understand. You can do what you feel like, right? People are like, oh, why are you wearing that clothing? That is not the clothing you're supposed to wear. No, I'm going to wear this. And you should too. Clara Khan is asking, can I make my own Netflix? Well, if there is a time to dethrone Netflix, I think now is the time to do it. Right? Because, like, why not? Because here's the thing. So we're talking about, if you guys want to understand this for a second. So Netflix was our savior. In the era of cable TV and like $130 of like packaged crap that you had to buy if you wanted the 2 channels that you wanted to watch, along came Netflix. And Netflix is like, we're going to give you an easy monthly subscription. It's going to be pretty cheap. There's going to be a ton of good shows on there. And we were like, thank you, Netflix. And then the shows started getting worse and the price started getting more expensive. And now they're like losing subscribers. And now they're going to crack down on password sharing. So if somebody wants to make something that is your own Netflix, now is the time. How to get out of learned helpless loop? Start doing stuff. So if you guys want to understand how to get out of the learned helpless loop, understand that the learned helplessness loop starts in here. It is not a shortcoming of action. It is a shortcoming of thought because your mind says don't bother. So here's the key to overcoming learned helplessness. In order for you need to disentangle it mattering from you doing. Once you disentangle those 2 things, once you disentangle caring about the outcome from actually performing the action, learned helplessness has no leg to stand on. And the only way learned helplessness works is by convincing you not to act. Because that's how it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the moment you start acting, it doesn't have a leg to stand on. Peer Gunk is asking, just got here, what's this? That's a good question. Is ego a vestigial mental faculty? That is the question that I was least expecting after a commencement speech, but we shall answer it anyway. No, it is not a vestigial mental faculty. It is still very, very useful. So vestigial implies that we no longer need it. So despite the fact that we sort of oftentimes talk about conquering your ego, let's understand that ego serves a purpose, just like emotions do. Understanding your ego is very important, and being in control of your ego is really important. Ego is not bad. Ego controlling you is bad. You should control it. So you should still have a sense of what you're worth, right? We don't want y'all to be like, have no ego. It's just your ego should not be dictating your actions without your awareness. What about non-traditional students graduating in 2022? That's why we're giving this commencement speech. You may not even be graduating, but this is still a commencement for you, right? Like, I don't know that you're even formally graduating, but if you've learned something in 2022, give yourself a pat on the back and recognize that you get awarded a degree from the University of HG. Give yourself a pat on the back. You've done something solid in 2022. Good job. Now, this is the world that you inherit, and everything that I said, it still applies to you. That's the whole point, is because, like, we've sort of gate kept the idea of learning behind universities. But most of what we do, most of what we learn is not taught at a university. Right? Like, that's what's changing. It's becoming a tragedy that, like, universities are becoming assembly lines. They're not places of education. We do most of the learning on our own. So where is the most appropriate space to give a commencement speech? I think it's on the internet, to random people who are out there and have spent the year of 2021 to 2022, or even the last few years, learning how to navigate their life and get their shit together. And so bravo to you. Are you wearing shorts? No. How can I fix the world if I can barely take care of myself? With practice. So it starts by barely taking care of yourself. And then you're going to get better at that, and you're going to learn how to take care of yourself. And once you're ready, once you've learned how to take care of yourself, then you can turn your eyes to the world. Arctic Fire Pixie is saying, I want to make unlimited internet. Bravo, do it. Best way to mend a friendship. I've got 2 answers for you, okay? The first is apologize. And the second is to make sure that they're doing their part. So there are 2 reasons that friendships fail. One is that either you screwed up or they screwed up. Simple. And what propagates a broken friendship is when the other person screws up and you let them get away with it. So should you apologize? Absolutely. Do your part, but don't do any more. That's the best way to mend a friendship. For far too long, we've gotten into the situation that the world is in because some people did more than they were supposed to, and more importantly, other people did not take responsibility. What we're seeing globally right now is a group of people who don't take responsibility, don't use their power for the benefit of humanity, and then you've got the rest of people who are trying to make up for it. And a microcosm of that is friendship. We out of questions? How do we get truly new ideas? All Meat Patty is asking. We don't get truly new ideas, nor do we need them. So plagiarism is the basis of all creativity. Understand that what your mind does is take in existing ideas and combine them in new ways. And this is where for far too long we've tried to chase new ideas. We don't need new ideas. All we need is permutations on the old ones, right? And eventually, maybe somewhere along the way, you'll get a new idea, but I wouldn't worry about new ideas. I would worry about modifying what's broken, because that'll get us most of the way there. The other kind of thing, if you really want an answer, I'd say that entering a transcendent state of mind is a great way to get a truly new idea, because that's where it's not assembled by your mind. So understand that your mind can only assemble information based on your senses. That's all it's capable of. So for example, like you can't imagine a new color, right? Like you can't visualize like an 8th color or 9th color or 10th color or something like that. You can't visualize 4-dimensional space or 5-dimensional space or whatever. Like we can't do those kinds of things. So the mind is bound by the senses. So if you really want to create a new idea, you have to transcend the mind and transcend senses. But I don't think you need to. Inglorious Nova is saying, I'm going to rob a bank. Thank you, Dr. K. I don't think you should rob a bank. That sounds like a mistake. So everyone's talking about the fall of Netflix. Let me be clear. So I like Netflix. I'm a Netflix subscriber. And at the same time, just because I like them doesn't mean that the quality of Netflix is declining. I like a lot of their stuff. But I think somewhere along the way, I don't know exactly what happened, but they seem to have gone in a different creative direction. How to tell when you have an idea that is worth something, Simulaire is asking. So here's the thing. This is the wrong kind of thinking. So the question is how to tell when you have an idea that is worth something. No, dude. No. Don't rely on your idea being worth something as the gate to engaging in building it. If you have an idea, run with it. Right? So this is the problem, is that it's like this kind of thinking that's actually kind of gotten us here, which is like ahead of time, we're like, oh, is this going to work or is it not going to work? And then like you don't do it because that it opens the door to that voice tell you, oh, this isn't worth anything. But you have no idea what it's worth. So build it anyway. Like build it anyway. That's what I say. What this generation needs to do more than any time in the past, doesn't matter what you want to build, doesn't matter if it's worth something or not, just build it. Because the world will tell you whether it's worth something or not. Otherwise, you can't know. And if you're trying to assess the value of something ahead of time, you open the door to all of your own cognitive biases. So if you lack self-esteem or self-confidence and you have a brilliant idea, what do you think your mind is going to tell you? If the idea is truly brilliant, but your self-esteem is in the pits, it's going to tell you it's worthless. So you can't listen to it. Just build it. Just build it. Have faith. And even if it's trash, bask in it. There's even a guy, I forget who it is, there's some dude who makes useless devices. And it's brilliant. Tips on how to introduce our parents in this way of thinking. Let me think about that. So there's a part of me that says, don't. So there's a part of me that kind of says, this way of thinking is not something you have to convince other people of. This way of thinking is entirely internal. The whole point here is that you can't control anyone outside of yourself. So stop trying to convince them that their advice is not working for you. You spend so much energy trying to convince people of stuff. You just start living your life. If you have an idea, start working on it. If you want to plant a tree, plant a tree. You don't have to convince. This is a problem. This is actually the problem with the world, is that we spend so much time. You just look at climate change. We spend so much trying to convince people there's a problem when they're not even open-minded and they don't want to listen. And then you've spent 6 hours posting on Twitter, which, by the way, doesn't actually, I don't know if that makes the world a better place. I don't know. Instead of planting trees. So stop trying to convince people that they're wrong and that you're right. Stop trying to go for other people's understandings. If you understand this yourself, let that be your internal compass and let it drive your actions. Why are you wasting your breath on someone else? Now, you may say, but like, there are certain things that I have to abide by because they're my parents and they won't let me, AFK and drop out of school and stuff like that. If that's the case, then you just do what they say. No problem. But you are going to do your thing too. Michael Reeves? What does Michael Reeves have to do with anything? I'm confused. Michael Reeves is great. I don't know why people are talking about him, but so someone's saying parents are lost causes, why bother? I'm not saying parents are lost causes. I talk to my parents all the time. I think it's useful. But here's the important thing to understand. It's all about order of operations, chat. Don't let convincing your parents of the value of what you're trying to do be a necessary step to do what you want to do. That's where we get tripped up. Should you communicate with your parents? 100%. But their assent or their understanding should not be a necessary step in your life. Do y'all get that? Yeah, Complex Compound is saying stop convincing, start planting 100%. Because here's the thing. When you start planting, people will notice. Right? When you start changing your life, people will notice. And then they'll ask you, they'll be like, something's different about you. What's changed? When they ask the question is when you should explain. Very important. Don't try to sit them down and explain to them how they're wrong. You just start living your life. And as you live your life, they will come to you and they will ask. And that's when you should offer your answer. How do you share an idea and get others to work on something that seems crazy impossible to others? I don't know why you would share your idea or why you would get other people to try to work on it. You don't have to convince them. Find someone just as crazy as you are and they'll work on it together. Otherwise, you do it yourself. So that's been our experience on Twitch. We just started something crazy. And then people who believed in what we were doing showed up to help. And that includes y'all. How to reignite lost passion. So understand that in order for passion to burn and be reignited, you need fuel. So the number one reason why people lose their passion is because they're ground to dust by the life they lead. And that could be things like dead-end jobs. It could be toxic relationships. It could be literal things like a lack of sunlight and vitamin D deficiency or anemia or sleep apnea. So in order to ignite a passion, you need a fertile soil. And so the first thing you should do for Igniting your passion is taking care of yourself. Are you getting 8 hours of good sleep a night? Are you exercising? Do you see the sun? Do you touch grass? Do you walk barefoot in safe, clean places? Right? These are the kinds of things. Do you eat healthy food? I recently saw an article that I think was overstating the value of this, but there's a few studies that have demonstrated reduction in symptoms of ADHD and improvement in focus with dietary change. So how do I focus? You change your diet. You all have to understand. So we think about mental problems as originating within the mind. This is very important to understand. The mind is heavily influenced by our brain. We know that because occasionally people will get damage to their brain and then their mind will start working differently. Right? So Phineas Gage is a famous example of this, where he got a frontal lobe injury and his personality completely changed. So when we talk about finding our passion, we think it's a mental pursuit, but it starts with the physicality of it. The mind is rooted in the brain, which in turn is rooted in the body. So take care of your body first, and that's the first step to letting your passion grow. What does happiness mean to me? Happiness means being content with the actions I've taken on any given day. That's happiness. Bonus points for being able to enjoy a moment in time. So the other day I was like looking at a tree and like that was pretty cool. But generally speaking, what leads to happiness or satisfaction for me is being able to be satisfied with the actions that I took on any given day. Do you have pants on? Yes, I do. Karika Lonel is asking, why is he in a suit? We've said this before, but we'll say it again. First of all, it's not a suit, it's a tux. And secondly, I'm in a tux because I feel like it. Stay hydrated is important too. How do I find my soulmate? Okay, this is tricky. Here's the first question. If you're looking for your soulmate, question number one. Question number one is, would you recognize your soulmate if you found them? Right? Like, think about that for a second. Have you ever met your soulmate before? So here's the thing. If you say the answer to that is yes, how can you be so sure? Like, what are you basing that on? Right? So this is the problem, is that so many things that we look for, and this, by the way, I think is something of the romantic generation that came ahead of us. The idea of a soulmate. Do I believe in soulmates? Sure. Why not? I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I'm just saying, would you recognize it? Would you recognize your soulmate if you met them? And what do you think a soulmate is? It's a meeting of the soul. It's not a meeting of interests in the mind. A soulmate is if Demon Slayer is your favorite anime of all time and you meet someone else for whom Demon Slayer is their favorite anime of all time, does that make you soulmates? No. That makes you more of a similar person. So the first question is, would you recognize your soulmate? And if the answer to that is, I don't know, then the first thing you've got to understand is that you may have already met them and you may have missed it. So then the question becomes, okay, well, if I don't even recognize my soulmate, then like, how on earth do I find them? And that's where the short answer is, you give people a chance. So in the search for what your hypothetical idea of a soulmate is, you may actually have met your soulmate and kind of missed it. And so what I'd say is, like, be a good human being, work on yourself, and give other people a chance. And then you may discover something unusual. You got to give people a chance for them to be your soulmate. Okay, next thing. How do I get rid of loneliness? This is simpler than it seems. So, there are times when you're about to take an action that would reduce your loneliness, but some part of your mind says, don't bother. right? There are times where you're like, oh, I should text my friend. It'll say, don't bother. Oh, I should go see my grandmother. I don't feel like it. Or someone is asking me if they want to hang out, but what if I make an idiot of myself? That's what you need to change. You need to stop the ways that your mind sabotages you and look for it, because it's going to tell you, don't do that. That's a mistake. And in a sense, you have a choice between making that mistake or choosing loneliness. You have to understand that at the opposite side of loneliness is safety. So oftentimes the reason that we end up lonely is because we choose safety instead of loneliness. Because when you're by yourself, it's a very safe place to be. And so what people don't realize, they look at themselves and they say, oh my God, I'm so lonely. I don't understand why I'm like this. It's because you choose safety. That's why you're like this. And it's not a bad choice, so stop beating yourself up. Understand that loneliness comes with a benefit, comes with an advantage. It pays a dividend of safety and security. So sometimes you have to do things that feel a little bit risky to your mind. I'm not saying doing things that are actually risky. What I mean is like go and engage with people socially. Is it a bad thing to be attracted to other people when you're in a relationship? I don't think so. Now, I mean, attraction is generally speaking not something that you can control, but this is where I'd say be careful with your thoughts of attraction. Don't give them food and water and fertilizer. So you can indulge in attractive thoughts, or you can like let them pass through you. Like you can let it wash through you. Like, oh, that person is attractive. And then be careful, because if your mind starts entertaining more things, it's like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could, yeah, right? Like, don't do that kind of stuff. It's okay to be attracted to other people, but let it wash through you. The other thing is it's much more likely to acknowledge an attraction if you yourself are detached from the attraction. So you can acknowledge that someone is attracted without it meaning anything for you, right? In the same way that you can look at, like a flower and be like, oh, that flower is really beautiful. And you're not thinking like, oh, I want to bring that flower home with me and plant it in my garden. Like you can acknowledge something's value without attaching yourself to it. Why did you make the conscious choice of being more prone to ego? I didn't understand the question, Koji Korma. How do you lower expectations on yourself or raise appreciation of your accomplishments? Let me think about this for a second. So I don't think either of those things is actually going to work. Okay, so let's understand this for a second, all right? So if I were to tell you, here's how you lower expectations of yourself for yourself, what are you going to do with that? You're going to be like, screw that. I don't want to lower expectations of myself. That's like admitting failure. I don't want to lower expectations. I want to raise myself to meet my expectations. Do you guys get that? Like, you can't just lower expectations of yourself. It's sort of like, if you lower expectations of yourself, you're just going to think of yourself as a failure. You're going to be like, I'm the dumbass that had to lower expectations to like find some sense of commitment or like appreciation for myself. Like, you're not going to do that, right? If you have high expectations of yourself, like those are there for a reason, and giving up on them is not going to happen. How do you raise appreciation of your accomplishments? It's kind of the flip side of the same coin. If you undervalue something that you do, it's going to be like hard to just sort of artificially raise that. So here's what you should do, is try to understand where these expectations come from. Because if you're not meeting expectations, those are not good expectations, because it's not what you're like, it's not reasonable for you to expect that of yourself. Does that make sense? Like if I have a 2.0 GPA and I go to college next semester, I'm like, I should get a 4.0. It's like, where on earth am I getting that expectation? It's completely bizarre. So understand the origins of your expectation. That's truly how to let go of them. Because once you understand the origins of your expectation, you'll recognize that the expectations that you have of yourself are probably a little bit unrealistic. And then what you need to do is grieve. Because you have to give up that person that you thought you were and start being the person that you actually are. The big irony there is getting to be the person that you want to starts with letting go of that person entirely. The problem with expectations is that you're trying to live up to something instead of like moving upward from where you are. So the other challenge with expectations is that the more you expect from yourself, the more insignificant any step forward you take is. So if I have a 2.0 GPA, if I have straight C's, and I want to get straight E's, E's. A B will actually make me unsatisfied and will actually like damage my motivation because it doesn't live up to my expectation. So this is the weird paradox that you fall into, is progress destroys your motivation. And like, how on earth is that a formula for success? When actually doing better makes it harder for you to be motivated. So look at the source of your expectations and then start to recognize that you can expect certain things about yourself, but ultimately you want to untie or untangle your expectations from your actions. How to not be scared of being wrong and doing anything. Okay, this is great. So DeBam is asking you how to not be scared of being wrong or making a mistake. So you all need to stop doing this. You need to stop trying to insulate yourself from emotions. It's paralyzing. How to not be scared? You be scared. That's okay. You can still act. The problem is that we're all looking for a life that is free of negative emotions. And just look at that question. How do I not be afraid of making a mistake? It's like, you're not saying, how do I not make a mistake? What you're concerned about is the fear that comes with making a mistake. And so we need to start accepting that life is going to have negative emotion with it. And that fear is not something to be afraid of. Ironically. Right? That fear is okay. There's a reason why our brains have evolved to feel fear. And instead of trying to insulate yourself from fear, which, by the way, leads us to unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? Because, like, what takes away negative emotions? Video games, doom scrolling, heroin. Like, these are all things that take away negative emotions. Marijuana. And so if our strategy is to insulate ourselves from all negative emotion, then that strategy is way more, we're way more vulnerable to like these kinds of things. So instead, be okay with being afraid. It's okay to be afraid. The other cool thing is that being afraid does not mean that you will make a mistake. In fact, if you really think about it, the reason that fear exists is to protect us from mistakes. So if you have to do something anyway and you feel afraid of doing it, acknowledge that fear, recognize that that fear is going to be like giving you some warning signs. So now you have the warnings and you're going to do it anyway. But now that you're aware of the possible dangers, it'll actually increase your chances of success. So notice the fear, acknowledge it, set it aside, don't let it dominate you, and participate in the action anyway. But if your goal is to not be scared, that's a goal that I don't think is going to lead you in the right direction. So Armani Salsa is asking, you took a risk going after your wife, right? No, she took a risk going after me. I never took a risk with her. She was great from day one. I was the sus one in the relationship. When we started dating, I was like a nobody. And she stuck with it. You guys get that? How do I choose the right profession for me? Great question, Hangry Imp. You can't choose the right profession, right? So like, here's the thing to understand. You're not going to be batting 100% from the get-go. The right profession is something that you carve out. It is not packaged and ready for you on the shelf. So if you're looking for the right profession for you, you are an individual with all kinds of different attributes. Do you like working with people or not working with people? Do you like to code or not code? Do you like to work in sales or not sales? Okay, I like to code, but I'm an extrovert. There may be a particular job out there, like maybe you want to be like manage a team of developers. Like there may be something out there, but it's not something that you choose. It's something that you find. So there's this presumption that if I choose right, that I will like be in the right profession. That's not how it works. The right profession is something that you build or carve out, is honestly what it feels like to me. You take a couple of like core building blocks and then you start carving out your ideal profession. It's something that is crafted, not something that is found. And the problem is that we're taught, right? So like even from a young age, we're asked like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like there's just so much conditioning that my successful professional life is an issue of choice. It's not an issue of choice, it's an issue of craftsmanship. Can kissing be platonic? I mean, some cultures kiss on the cheeks and stuff. But, mouth to mouth seems weird to me. I don't know. Dr. K, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Procacrod is asking, why so elegant? Because you're here, Procacrod. This is for you, baby. Oh my God, I'm so behind. There's so much chat that I have to scroll through. Okay, should I change it? We'll do subreddit posts. Thoughts on long distance relationship? Yeah, so here's the thing about long distance relationships. I'd only stay in one if there's a plan to get out of it, of the long distance part. So like, you have to really be actively moving. So I think the biggest mistake that people make in long distance relationships, it's fine to be in a long distance relationship, is not actively working towards being together. And they just sort of assume like, okay, well, like we're long distance because I live in one place and you live in another, and that's how it is. We'll figure it out one day. And it's when you sort of say to yourself, we'll figure it out one day, instead of let's figure it out like now. Like it doesn't mean you have to move it in together within like 3 months. But there should be a general sense of like planning and direction where both of y'all can see your progress towards being together. Should I set expectations with my friend? Nico Ale 2000 is asking. I don't know what you mean by set expectations. Should you set boundaries with friends? 100%. How to stop drowning in distractions? So drowning in distractions is a consequence of your sense organs. So the nature of distraction is born through sensory input. Control your sensory input and you'll control your distraction. Can you do another Kendrick Lamar song review? I'd love to. Elder Hero 1, can I be your friend? I would love to, but I don't know if that's possible or not. I have no idea. How do I meditate when sick? I wouldn't meditate when sick. I would just relax. I mean, you could do some like relaxation practices and things like that, but I would focus on rest and physical recovery. What's the best decision you've done in your early 20s? What a great question, Riddick. So this is going to sound kind of weird, but like, I think the best thing that I understood in my 20s is that there aren't good decisions or bad decisions. There are just decisions that you make at the time. And you can't really control what the outcome of your decision is. So for example, the first year I applied to medical school, I didn't get in anywhere. I didn't even get a single interview. Second year I applied, I got one interview. Third year I applied, I got one interview. Or maybe I got an interview first year too. I don't remember. Rusty. So you could say, like, was it a good decision to apply to medical school that first year because I didn't get in? Like, I don't know. Was it a good decision to apply to medical school that third year when I did finally get in? Like, I don't know. Right? So here's the thing that you've got to understand. It's not about good decisions or bad decisions. You make the best decision you can in the moment, and you recognize there's a decent chance that things aren't going to work out. Because when you say, what is the best decision? How are you gauging best? It usually means like a good outcome, right? That's how you know you made the best decision. So, and then like, because it's kind of weird, but best implies that there are like alternate universes that you can freely choose between. That's not how life works. You just make the decisions that you make and you live with the consequences of your decisions. So I think that's where like, stop trying to find the best decision and just make the decisions that you can and recognize that they may not work out for you, which is totally fine. How can I break harmfully vicious cycles I've fallen into where will was much stronger in the past and almost non-existent in the present? I think change your circumstances. So when your willpower is insufficient, you have to recognize what are all of the circumstances that are affecting you. So oftentimes what I find is like a change of like friend group or even change of location or limiting your exposure to particular things can be wonderful for breaking cycles. So if your cycle is you wake up every day, you sit on the computer and you don't do anything, the most important thing you need to do is just get the F out of the house. First thing that you wake up. Brush your teeth, shower if you feel like it, and then like step outside of the house and like go for a walk. Just like go for a walk. For 1 hour, like get out of the house for the first hour of your day. Vicious cycles are perpetuated by our environment. And so changing our environment is critical to breaking out of a cycle. It's sort of like, how do I break out of this cycle? I'm in this on again, off again relationship. I've broken up with my ex 5 times and we always get back together. How do I stop that and start dating other people? Well, it's like, as long as your ex orbits around you, your ex is going to exert that gravitational force on you. You can't escape it. So get away from the orbit. Shape your environment. Dr. Dream is, I think I met my soulmate, but I scared him off because of my BPD. How do I live with that? So first of all, even that thought may be a consequence of something from BPD. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But oftentimes what I find when I've worked with people with BPD is that they believe they are solely responsible for driving someone away, right? Because sometimes people with BPD have a fear of abandonment, and that fear of abandonment takes over and makes you think you're responsible for driving this person away, which could be a consequence of your BPD, but that may not be actually why they left. But in a practical sense, if you have BPD and you have difficulty in relationships, I would start by getting into treatment for your BPD. And even if you scared that person away, even if that's true, first of all, if you get better and you sort of start to become more centered in yourself, fate may put the two of you into the same path again, or someone else could come along. And so if your BPD scared someone away, that's unfortunate, but also like now you know what you need to work on to build a healthy relationship, if it's with that person or with someone else. Good luck to you, by the way. Okay. Change. So, Eater Larendale is saying, my girlfriend says I mention my ex too much, so stop mentioning your ex. So you can think about your ex, but recognize that your words have an impact on the people around you. Or don't mention your ex to your girlfriend, right? What's in here doesn't have to come out the mouth. There's a filter. So adjust your filter. Snydem is saying, hey, Dr. K, I'm graduating college and moving into the workforce. Now I'm finding myself worried about how to make friends as an adult. First of all, congratulations for graduating. Secondly, congratulations for moving into the workforce. And now I'm finding myself worried about how to make friends as an adult. Good. So it's okay to be worried about something. It doesn't mean that you won't have difficulty making friends. And in fact, having some amount of understanding that making friends as an adult may be harder than it was in college or in the workforce will actually set you up better to make friends. The most tragic situations I tend to hear of are the ones where people sort of took it for granted that it was easy to make friends and then didn't take making and maintaining friendships a priority in their life, and then 10 years go by and they're very lonely. So make it a priority in your life and just give it your attention. The cool thing is when y'all give something your attention, you'll do a pretty good job. Yeah. So Russian VT is, or Russian VT is, how can you get confidence to take the bar exam if you can't even imagine you're going to pass? You forget about passing. So this is something to understand about the bar exam. The bar exam is not about passing. So this is kind of a reframe that can help. The goal of the bar exam is not to pass. The goal of the bar exam is to learn enough law to be a practical lawyer. That's what the bar exam is there for. It's there as a way to separate out people who know law from people who don't. So what you should do is focus on learning all the goddamn law you can. You're going to learn everything inside and out because once you're a lawyer, people are going to ask you, right? So you have to know about contracts. You have to know about torts. You have to know about patent law. You have to know about divorce. You have to know about all of that stuff. So that's what you should focus on. You are there to master as much law as you can. And set aside a reasonable study schedule for yourself. I don't know how many months it takes or whatever, but build a study schedule, go through it. And once you're through it, take the exam. And forget about passing. It's not about passing. It's about learning the law. Yeah, so I have Firail is saying, I have a friend and his ex is actually in his class degree for the next 2 years and they have the same friend group. RIP. Yeah, so I mean, that's okay, right? You can have someone who you dated in your friend group. The main thing is that this is where I think it's sometimes you got to be a little bit careful about dating people in your friend group, right? Just got to be a little bit careful about that. Okay. I'm going to thank you for all the compliments, Manusk and other people. Why the fancy suit, Natoxis? I'm going to go change. And we've got a couple of good Reddit posts to go through. What do you think about the importance of a fresh start, like going into a new job or graduating? Ramen Noodle 95. I think a fresh start is really, really important. It can feel quite refreshing, and it's a great opportunity to reinvent parts of yourself. The biggest thing that gets in the way of fresh starts is you, because you tend to bring stuff with you, right? So that's what you should be really, really conscious of, is that a fresh start, it can have a lot to do with location or job or things like that, but the biggest thing that makes something not a fresh start is what you bring with you. So watch out for that. Banzuj is saying, I suffered from anxiety disorder and now I'm a free man. Good for you. Congrats. Okay. Looks like we're keeping the tux on. All right. Let's go. Okay, let's take a look. I'm starting to think I don't respect myself. I have a fiance who recently went on a vacation. I found out later she was talking to a coworker the entire time she was gone. Once she got back, she started hanging out with him for 5 to 8 hours at a time while lying to me about where she was, even one time overnight. I have my own issues with trust and feel like I spend too much time living in my partner's life. So I found out about this through checking her location. I confronted her with this, and she said she felt like she needed some space and always felt watched around me. I don't completely deny this because I feel like I have a really hard time trusting, and she is a compulsive liar due to her own childhood traumas. She said that she is not cheating, but talking to this person helps her have conversations to work out her past traumas. He has had similar traumas he has overcome, and that I am emotionally closed off. Not completely true. Where I'm starting to have issues is that I do somewhat believe her that she is not cheating, but let her know that I need openness and honesty if this is going to work. She quickly disrespected this by lying about where she was 2 days later, to again talk with this guy for 5 or so hours. I don't know if I am the abuser or the one getting abused. Is me checking in on where she's at and glancing over her shoulder when she's on the phone causing her to feel a lack of privacy the real issue? Or am I just getting my boundaries steamrolled and letting her lie to me by blaming myself for this? I'm starting to get creeping doubts that I don't respect myself enough to enforce my boundaries and enact consequences for when she crosses them, like leaving the relationship. She doesn't want to lie, but has extreme conflict avoidance that makes telling the truth extremely hard. One of these things she is trying to fix. A recurring thought that I have is that because I have these unhealthy trust issues, that I deserve this, or that even if I break this off, it will just happen to the next relationship. Reflecting these past 2 weeks, I believe my invasiveness, untrusting nature is what caused my relationship previously to deteriorate and end. Do I try to work this out with her? How do I enforce or communicate my needs of being open and honest to work on my own issues when being open and honest is one of her core issues? I want to make it clear that I do not condone my behavior. Even if she does lie, I need to work on myself and to not immediately jump to infidelity just because she is talking to someone of the opposite sex. This situation has just been a wake-up call that these deep-rooted issues need to be addressed and worked on. I think this answered the question. Right? This is fantastic. So the situation is unfortunate. But the first thing that I want to point out is that relationship problems are not usually a me thing or a them thing. So we have this kind of idea. Our mind tells us, is me checking on her where she's at and glancing over her shoulder when she's on the phone causing her to feel a lack of privacy? Or am I getting my boundaries steamrolled and letting her lie by blaming blah, 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 right? There's this idea of or. That is this an issue of this person being like not trusting? Or is it an issue of this the person that they're dating like not being entirely honest or whatever? Like it's not or, it's a combination. So this is what I want y'all to understand. So like a relationship is not something on you and something on her. That's not how it is. It's a combination of what each of you bring to the table. So I bring a certain set of like thinking and conditions and reasoning and stuff like that. And then my partner brings another set of stuff up, right? So, and then like these two things blend together and you create something new that is like half from you and half from her. Now, this relationship to me, the one thing that I can say is that I don't think that this sounds like a healthy relationship moving in the right direction. Now, some people may say, oh, just break up with them. Other people may say, oh no, like it's on you. No, I don't think it's either or. So if you're in a relationship where, you don't trust your partner, that can create sort of a situation where if you don't trust them, they may paradoxically feel like they have to keep things from you. So if she tells you, yeah, I'm going to go meet a coworker of mine, and then like that sort of sets you off in some way, your partner may decide that the simplest thing to do is just not tell you, because then she doesn't have to deal with like your reaction. Now, if you have conflict avoidance there, like if conflict avoidance on her part plus a lack of trust on your part results in like a lack of communication, which is like quite bad. Do y'all get that? So if I don't trust, any lack of communication is going to, like any question mark in the relationship, I'm going to see the worst options. So any uncertainty becomes a doomsday scenario for someone who has difficulty trusting. On the flip side, if someone's conflict avoidant, anything negative or positive, there's all kinds of stuff that's going to be more question marks because the conflict avoidant person does not want to have a conversation, is troubled by the conversation, doesn't want to get things out in the open. It doesn't even mean that there's anything to hide, right? It's not necessarily that they're doing something wrong, but conflict avoidance leads to a lack of communication. A lack of communication leads to question marks. And if you have trust issues, question marks are going to get translated in your brain as infidelity. So this is like absolutely a scenario where these two things are like combining in a terrible way. Does that make sense? So what do you do about this situation? The first is that I commend this person for this level of insight where they're like, I think the last reason my relationship deteriorated was like a lack of trust. And so in the past, if your partner has tried to communicate with you and the part of you that feels difficult to trust comes out, right? And you start getting paranoid. You may not like lash out at them in sort of an aggressive way, but you may like start to be like super passive aggressive. Where were you? What were you doing? And even though they say things like, you don't believe it, and they see that you don't believe it, and they see that you're upset, and they're conflict avoidant and they don't want to make you upset. So then they conclude like, because even if they weren't doing anything wrong, they can't keep you from getting upset because you have trust issues. Does that make sense? Because how are they supposed to reassure you if you don't have trust? Right? Does that make sense? So if they can't reassure you, then they stop talking to you. And then that exacerbates the problem. So this is the kind of thing where I would say a couple things. First is you should work on this trust issue yourself, right? This is something that you need to work through. If it's a pattern that extends beyond this relationship, it's something you should work on yourself. Second thing is y'all should probably work on this together as well. In terms of like, help me. And what you've got to do is be super open-minded. So when you sit down with your partner, don't try to judge or convince or even share your perspective at all. Just try to understand your partner's perspective. Okay? And what you want to do is say things like, help me understand what makes it difficult for you to tell me when you're hanging out with this person. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm genuinely trying to understand, like, can you help me understand what goes on in your head? Help me understand how you make the decisions you make. I'm not saying they're wrong. I just want to try to understand them so that I can like make my peace with it. Right? And listen to what they have to say. The other thing is, frankly, some of this stuff is a little bit sus. I'm just going to toss that out there. Like spending the night somewhere and sort of being a little sus about it, like that's really kind of weird. So, I think your paranoia is maybe a little bit justified. But at the same time, like, they're just warning signs here, right? Like, that's what this is. And so just because there's a warning sign doesn't mean that there's a problem yet. But this is the kind of thing where I don't think this relationship is heading in the right direction. So you need to work on your stuff yourself. You probably also need to work on this with your partner. But it's not like an either-or kind of situation. And that's where if you lay a boundary with someone and you don't enforce it, all you're really reinforcing is the concept that your boundaries don't need to be respected. So if I like tell someone, I'm like, if you don't call me in the next hour, I'm never talking to you again. And they call 2 hours later and I answer the phone, what am I reinforcing for that person? All I'm reinforcing is that you don't have to respect my boundaries. Now, this is where you got to be a little bit careful because what this may mean is like, I'm going to teach these people to respect my boundaries. If you don't call me the next hour, I'm never talking to you again. And since they called me 2 hours later, like I ain't answering the phone, I'm gonna text them, F you didn't call me in the hour. Blocked, bitch. The other part of this is you can't set stupid boundaries. Like, don't sign yourself up for a stupid boundary that you then have to reinforce. You guys get that? So never set a boundary when you are emotionally upset. Like, never do that. Voice your frustration, but don't set a boundary. Boundaries should be set with a clear head, with also an understanding of what is actually enforceable. Like, what are you actually going to do? I'm never going to talk to you again. Stupid. You're not going to do that. So don't say that. Right? And then what happens is, like, it just creates lots of frustration. When you set an unreasonable boundary on someone, they don't respect it, you don't respect it, and then, like, it just gets frustrating for everyone involved. So think carefully about which boundaries you're going to set. And chances are you're going to set lighter boundaries than you think you deserve, which is totally fine. Boundaries should be set based on enforcement, not what should be. This is something we talk about a lot in parent coaching. We spend 12 weeks teaching parents how to set proper boundaries on their kids. And, like, it works really well once you think a little bit. Parents are like, no playing games after 10 p.m. Are you up after 10 p.m.? Are you going to watch the kid and make sure they don't play games after 10 p.m.? No, they're just supposed to listen. Well, they're not going to. And all you're going to teach them is that they don't have to respect what you say. So don't set a boundary for no games after 10 p.m., but then they're going to play games after 10 p.m. Yeah, so you've got two options. Either they can play games after 10 p.m. and not respect what you say, or they can play games after 10 p.m. and you don't set a boundary on them and shoot yourself in the foot that you're not going to enforce anyway. They're going to play games after 10 p.m. either way. It's just, do you want them to respect what you say or not? You guys get that? So don't set boundaries that you're not willing to enforce. So as for what to do in this situation, I mean, I think it's challenging, you know, because even what's happening is I'm seeing an emotional wedge being driven between these two people. And when you have an emotional wedge and you have someone who gets into the habit of not telling you where they are or lying about it or things like that, and you have someone who's, like, habitually paranoid, then you're going to, I mean, this is where affairs and breakups come from, right? So, like, she's got you, who's paranoid and looking over her shoulder all the time, who she can't emotionally connect with. And then she's got this other guy who's available and easy and fun to hang out with and that she emotionally connects with. And, like, where do you think that's going? Right? Now, that may terrify you, but, like, acknowledge where it's going so that you can alter its course. Sticking your head in the sand and, like, ignoring the problem is not going to help. It's easy to do that. It's easy to, like, be afraid of what's going to happen and say, like, oh, like, but, like, don't, you know, you should, when you create a situation with your partner where you cause them a lot of headache and someone else doesn't, that's, like, a dangerous situation to be in. Now, we're not saying that that entitles your partner to cheat on you. Hopefully what they would do is break up with you first. But that's just kind of how it is, right? So, like, the relationships are about people who support each other and care about each other and enjoy each other's company. And if that's no longer what the relationship is, like, you don't necessarily need to hold on to the relationship. Got it? The other thing to say is that, like I was saying, this is a combination of two things, right? So you may just need to be with someone who is more open to communicating and is more able to reassure you and is, like, more, like, able to do that emotionally. Now, that could be this person, but then she's got to grow into that. So this is where, like, a lot of times what people will sort of assume is that you should be with someone who ... but, like, that doesn't mean that you have to break up with your current person. And your partner deserves to be with someone who's a little bit more trusting. So you can grow, each person in a relationship can grow into what the relationship needs. In fact, that's how it works. Because if you're dating, if you two of you are dating, you're both 18, you're going to be different people and have different needs at 24. And they're going to be different people and have different needs at 30. And they're going to be different people and have different needs at 36. So you always have to grow and change into what the relationship needs. And when you're sort of committed to the relationship, that's what that commitment means. It means growing and changing into what the relationship needs. If that makes sense. Okay. 25, jobless, aimless. Commencement speech for you, friend. Hello. I am 25 years old, a male living at home with both of my parents. I've never had a proper education, whilst I struggle to maintain a job for more than 2 months. It feels like my life is dissolving right in front of me, while every single friend I had, all of them have careers and living on their own. I'm here living at home with no savings, with no job, and as I am growing older, it seems harder to even get a job, which somehow makes me even more depressed than it should. I'm clueless on what my next step in life is. I don't know where my talents are. I don't believe that I seem to struggle a bit with my own. I believe that I seem to struggle a bit with my own personality, as I can think through solutions to my problems, but I have such a difficult time acting them out. Therapy is way too expensive for me to be able to get, since I am broke and have zero savings. I had a hard time growing up having 2 depressed parents and 3 depressed siblings. While I try not to be depressed, it feels like I am feeling depressed due to being a failure in life. I have simple goals in life. All I want to do is have a home, live alone, have a job, and play video games. I don't demand much, but achieving that is hard because it almost feels like I have to fake it. And I can't really fake how I feel. And I think it's self-reflective. So every job interview I attain, the interviewer kind of feels me on a personal level and sees through my BS and declines my offer. This vicious cycle is almost gravitating me downwards, suffering involuntarily. I don't know what my next action is. It feels like if I can talk to someone and draw some sort of conclusion upon what I need to do in order to get my life together, that would be bliss struck upon me, since my biggest strengths are my extreme work ethic with perseverance. I can repeat patterns very efficiently and maintain them too, but it seems like a fake power-up somehow, almost like playing a rigged game, where just because I can do it, it might not feel authentic at all. And I'm not kidding, my brain works turbo mode. I can work my bum off on something forever. I even have a hard time sleeping because of this problem. My feelings tend to lean toward failure, but my logical self seems to understand the problems I have and provide some sort of solutions to them. But it feels like my brain is trolling me because the solutions either don't work or I have to push them until they work. So that's why figuring out a proper solution that gives 100% outcome will somehow bring solace to me. Because if I grow up to be 80 and I still have nothing going for me in life, but I followed structured manners and proper instructions, then during my deathbed times, I can just say I was unlucky, which is a lot better than remembering myself as a failure. I need some sort of help to find a proper solution to my own problems. I want to stop this inner battle and conquer myself to establish my own kingdom. But the hard part is that it seems to be dragons everywhere and my sword ain't sharp enough. What a poetic way to close. Okay, so there's a lot here. So let's start with this. If your goal is to conquer yourself, there's going to be a victor and there's going to be a loser. So the first thing that I'd say is that if we look at this pattern, this person musters up some courage. They come up with an intellectual solution and they charge, right? But then something happens. They're not able to hold a job longer than 2 months. The interviewer sees through something. Maybe there's a cognitive bias there. And so they essentially try to overcome their emotions through intellect. And then what they're looking for is some kind of, if I just find this solution, that's 100%. If I can figure this out, then I'll be golden. There's got to be a solution out there. There's got to be some way to overcome and conquer this internal sense of self. And then I can succeed out there. There's got to be a solution because I've come 80% of the way there and it's worked for some time. There's got to be a better solution out there. I can get 80% of the way there and I just need to go for 100%. Here's the problem with trying to conquer yourself is that you are the winner and you are the loser. You will be victorious and you will be defeated. And so for a time you were victorious. You go to the job interview, you apply to jobs, you start work. But then that defeated part of you is still there. And then we fall into this cycle where I conquer myself over and over and over again. And I pile up defeats. And each time I'm a victor, I create a loser. And I set it aside and set it aside and set it aside. And then it becomes untenable. because the amount of defeats keep piling up and eventually like they start coming out, right? So this happens a lot for people who are looking for intellectual solutions and willpower-based solutions. I'm going to rely on my intellect and forget about my emotions and overcome my emotions. But all you're doing, it's sort of like you can't create a positron without an electron, right? If I have a neutron and I split it into two pieces, if I fight a war with myself and I conquer myself, there's going to be a victor and there's going to be a loser, and the loser is going to have to pay at some point. That's just karma. So what do you do about this situation? Because thinking through it over and over and over again and looking for the perfect solution is not going to work, because your perfect solution involves being victorious over yourself and creating a loser out of yourself. And that loser is going to show up somewhere. You can't just ship them off somewhere else. You carry them with you, which is exactly why you are in this situation. Because the cycle keeps continuing, because you keep on doing the same thing, which is to try to conquer yourself. Now, this is where the person says therapy isn't an option because it's too expensive. I don't know exactly what your situation is, and if that's 100% true, then my condolences to you. But there are a lot of people out there who think that therapy is too expensive, and they're not wrong, and also they're not entirely correct. So thankfully, I don't know where you live or what your situation is. Thankfully, there are a lot of organizations out there that will provide cost-effective or reduced fee therapy or even free therapy for people who can't afford it. Now, a lot of this is very like location dependent, geography dependent. So there's like, for example, an organization called the Open Path Collective. So the Open Path Collective is a group of therapists who commit to providing a certain amount of hours at very low or reduced or no fees. So if I'm a therapist on the Open Path Collective, I'll see 28 clients at my regular rate, and I have 3 hours a week that I'll see people at reduced rates or no rates. You also have organizations like Rise Above the Disorder, which are fantastic organizations that you can apply to for scholarships for therapy. So you can apply for those kinds of things. You also have like free mental health clinics, at least in the United States and other parts of the world. I don't know where you are. So if you're in a place that has very poor access to mental health resources, that's a problem. But generally speaking, what I oftentimes find is that people who say I can't afford therapy haven't really looked hard enough. And if you have looked hard enough and you really are in a place where that's not an option, I apologize. I'm not referring to you. And there are also therapists, a lot of us get into it to help people. And so a lot of us like sometimes make poor financial decisions due to compassion, which we're okay with. So even at one point in my practice, 70% of the people that I saw, 70% were free. Right? So it can happen. You can just ask people, hey, I'd really like to work with you, but I just can't pay right now. I've been unemployed for the last 2 years. Is there any way you can see me? You can just ask. So I would be careful there, because if you've really done your homework and you've tried, looking for these resources, if you did not know that these resources existed, then I don't think you've really done your homework. If that's news to you, you can also just try talking to your doctor, even if you can't afford therapy, but you just have a regular doctor. You can ask them, say, hey, I'm having trouble, because sometimes people in the system will be able to help you. So I wouldn't start by giving that up to begin with. Next thing is understand that as long as you're conquering yourself, you're going to have to pay the price for it later. So that's where instead of conquering yourself, what you need to do is be compassionate towards yourself. Forgive yourself. Third thing that I'd recommend is asking for help. So if all of your friends have careers, I would try talking to them and say, hey, I'm really struggling. Can you help me figure out how to get a job and keep a job? These are the challenges that I go through. Is there any way you can help me? And if you're friends, hopefully they'll help you. Right? It can feel very shaming to ask for help from your peers, but you got to get help from somewhere. And so I'd say on the one hand, be very careful about finding intellectual solutions to emotional problems, because this is what you end up with. You end up with digging deep with willpower, suppressing your emotions, succeeding for some amount of time, but you're essentially burning bonus energy. It's not like the core foundation, right? You're dipping into your reserves. It's not sustainable. And so it tends to lead to temporary successes and vicious cycles. So you've got to work on that emotional piece. What is the emotion that doesn't want you to go to the job interview? Because that's what the person is detecting. So once you kind of acknowledge that, work through that, hopefully we can help you some there in terms of like streams and meditation and things like that. Exercising, all that stuff can help, but also therapy can help, to be blunt. Right? And then lastly, reach out to your friends. It's a challenging situation, but I think the trickiest thing there is that what we think is going to work is what we do. And what we do actually creates the problem, is not a solution. That's how we get into vicious cycles. When what we think is the solution actually is the problem. And then we keep doing it and it keeps getting worse. And so take a step back, forget about what your mind is saying, and observe. What do you do and what are the results? Then stop doing that thing. Move in a different direction. Okay. I feel like I should change. It's getting hot. Let me go change. Chat. Is that okay? Can I have permission? Change? Share stream? No. Okay, let's do a poll. We'll poll. I will let y'all decide, chat. So be it. I'm here for you. Hold on. Okay, cool. Someone did it. Okay, people are saying yes. Thank you, chat. I will be right back, okay? We're not going to do chair stream. We're going to be starting soon. It'll be starting soon, but don't let people get debated. So what we want to do is cultivate a capacity for kindness. So, close your eyes. Take a few moments to breathe in and breathe out. I'm back, chat. Let us continue. We got time for maybe one more. Okay, let's take a look. Is this normal? Happens to me almost every night. Hey, congrats on making it to 35 years old. You must be really tired. You asleep yet? Yeah, almost asleep. Remember back when you were in the 3rd grade and no one gave you Valentine's card during the class Valentine's Day celebration? No one liked you and Jessica was just pretending to be your friend out of pity. People still don't like you. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's talk about sleep. Let's understand like why the hell the brain does this. Okay? So, there is so much that we have forgotten about how our minds work and how sleep works. So we're just going to explain this very simply, okay? So, our mind has thoughts. And thoughts have a certain energy to them. And our mind tends to do a couple of different things with thoughts, okay? The first thing that it does is indulge the thought. So if I think to myself like, oh, I want pizza, my mind is like, ooh, pizza. Like, I'll get it with this, and I'll get it with this, and I'll be like, oh, it'll be great. Like, I'm going to eat this, and I'm going to eat, oh, maybe I can have this, and then I'll have a drink with it. And so one thought propagates other thoughts, right? It's almost like thoughts breed. Second thing is sometimes when we have thoughts, what we tend to do is distract ourselves. So if we distract ourselves, the energy of the thought goes dormant. So we don't resolve it. We'll start doing something else. And then that thought energy is like kind of there and sort of goes dormant over time. The next thing to understand is that a lot of times our thought, since our mind is so occupied, there's no space for the dormant thoughts to come up. Okay? So what this sort of means is like if I'm playing video games all day, my mind really likes it in a sense because the mind gets occupied with lots of thoughts. And then what happens is like all the thoughts that I shoved away because of the video games are still there in some way. And then when my mind creates a time of silence, or when my mind is empty and does not have any sensory stimulation, because remember, think a little bit about where thoughts oftentimes come from is like sensory stimulation. So when I'm lost in a video game, like I'm getting a bunch of sensory input, it's harder to get lost in a video game that I'm playing if it's muted. And it's harder even if the monitor is off, right? If I have no sensory input from the video game, like I can still technically be playing, but I'm just not, I'm not going to be thinking about it. Does that make sense? It's like such a simple experiment that you can do. Where cut away your sensory input from a video game and see what happens to the video game and how much you think about it. If I played League of Legends, but the only time I played it, I was muted and the monitor was off, how long do you think I would play League of Legends? Right? Does that make sense? It's kind of weird. So why does this happen when we sleep? It's because sleep is the time that we don't have any sensory input. So we've got all this crap that's left there that starts to like fill this vacuum. And our mind starts thinking about like random stuff that happened a long time ago. And then it interferes with our sleep. Because we want to go to sleep, but this is the problem, is this the only dormant time our mind has gotten? So now what I want you all to do is think a little bit about the nature in which our mind evolved. So for millions of years, what kind of sensory input did we get? And how much empty mind time did we have? So the reason that our mind does this is because it evolved in a society or circumstance where there was plenty of time to like process or think through the things that we experience on a day-to-day basis. We weren't sensorially bombarded all the time. And you even see this with like people who will develop technology, right? Like they'll make the technology as infectious as possible. Bing! Notification. Bing! Notification. Bing! Oh, by the way, did you see this thing? And now, like, if you like, so Netflix used to show you stills, right? But now they show you video. So, you know, like they're more and more engaging. Ads used to be like pictures. Now they're video. So more and more sensory engagement, right? And that's pretty cool. Like when I log on, like I watch like some like 30 seconds of a clip, I'm like, oh, that looks like a good show. And then it engages my mind. So if you want to stop doing this kind of stuff where your mind like populates things before you sleep, the most important thing is to give your mind some space to let the pent up stuff out. So this is why like going for a walk before bed can be very good. But if you go for a walk, ideally don't listen to music and don't participate in conversation. If you want to talk, you can. Because then even then, like if you have like sort of a light conversation, it's like stuff is going to be coming out. This is also why, you know, people have very profound shower thoughts, right? Why is that? Same principle. It's because your mind actually has space to think. And the one thing that we've deprived ourselves of, we even pay people to take away from us, is the space to think. And as long as you don't give yourself space to think, anytime your mind finds space, it will think at you. It'll burst out. And so even if you like, we can understand this principle even in therapy, where like therapy is like literally the place that you go that creates a space for you to bring out stuff and like process it. And then as you process it in the therapy room, you leave and then it's like kind of gone. It's like cool how that works. There's even a spiritual element to this, where if you look at some of these old tantric traditions and things like that, they'll say that anything that is kept within you will grow in strength, and anything that is ventilated out will diminish. This is why mantras in certain esoteric meditation techniques are kept secret. Because as long as you keep it in here, it starts populating your mind. Does that make sense? Because like the whole point is that like you didn't process this thing that happened when Vicky didn't give you a Valentine's Day card. So it pops up a thought in your mind. And so when we do techniques like mantras, what we're actually doing is trying to engage this exactly. When you do a mantra properly, what you're doing is this thought is the mantra instead of a negative thing. And when you have a mantra instead of a negative thing, it actually like works for you. So then anytime you have a quiet moment, there's something like some positive mantra that comes out, and like instead of this, it creates like a positive emotion. That's kind of how mantra works. And we also kind of know this because people who vent what they do, that diminishes in energy, right? So if you vent a trauma, like that hopefully diminishes the energy of the trauma. If you vent your brand new business idea, it diminishes the energy of the business idea and the business never comes to fruition. And we know this. So if you're someone who has random thoughts as you fall asleep, give your mind some space before you go to sleep to vent whatever random crap you want. Do that for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then you'll be surprised. It'll be easier to go to sleep. So this is a good question. How to differ between overthinking and maladaptive daydreaming and healthy processing? Very good question. So the main question here is, does the thought lead to more thoughts or does it diminish more thoughts? So when you process something healthily, you kind of let it go, right? You kind of like let it pass through you and it's kind of like gone. Whereas in the cases of maladaptive daydreaming and overthinking, if you go back to like the beginning of this question, one thought propagates another thought. When you daydream, each thought creates an additional thought and creates an additional thought. That's what happens in the daydream, right? It's kind of starting with like a single like Lego, and then you're building stuff with it. And the more that you build with it, the bigger it gets and the more it occupies your mind. I'm going to build a house. Oh, I have a house. Now I need a window. Now I have a window. Now I need people. I'm going to put people in there. Oh, now the people need a garage. So I'm going to build a garage. Now the garage needs a car. So I'm going to have a car. Now the car needs a place to go to. So I'm going to make an airport. Now I have an airport. I need an airplane. That's maladaptive daydreaming. One thing propagates another. You can create an entire fictional universe in your mind. Whereas when you emotionally process, you feel kind of tired at the end of it and you're done. enough. And your mind moves on to other things. So very important distinction. So someone else is saying, I usually read before bed. Is that a distraction? Usually, yes. Now, there can be other benefits to reading before bed, like other kinds of things, because it's like physiologically, it's a calming activity. You can engage your parasympathetic nervous system. You're not looking at a screen. So if you're not looking at a screen, you're not inhibiting melatonin production. So melatonin can start ramping up while you're reading. So a lot of good reasons to read before bed. But when you're reading, you're not really giving space to your mind, if that makes sense, right? You're still occupying it with something. Okay. Does that make sense? I heard that the melatonin blue light effect is actually not true. I have not. That is not what I understood. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not. Last time I looked at the research, it seemed like it was a problem. So journaling is a really good example of something that you're actually formally like creating space for your mind, right? If that makes sense. So that's really good because then you're like letting things out onto paper and it's even giving them form. So journaling is like the opposite. Journaling is omega sag, to be honest. Well, you don't have to journal sad things. Right? That's oftentimes what comes out, but it doesn't have to be sad. Okay. Shall we meditate, chat? Should I turn off my phone at a certain time? 100%. Or at least mute it. Or do something where you disable notifications for a brief period of time. And that way, if there's some kind of emergency, you can still get reached in the middle of the night. Techniques to journal. Let me think about this. I'm trying to think, is there some way to meditate with journaling? Well, let me think. Okay, so let me just think a little bit about. I can't really come up with something that's journaling related. By the way, thank you very much. I see we have like several donations, so thank you all very much for the donations from Anonymous. I guess I don't know if we're plugged in or what, but we've gotten $20 donations, $50 donations. I don't know if it's the same person who's anonymously donating, or if it's multiple people, but. Okay. Well, let me think about what kind of meditation we want to do. Would digital drawing be worse than drawing in a sketchbook at night? I think so. Isn't that the point of anonymity? 100%. So I'm not asking to, but also, I appreciate what they're doing. I've not seen the work of John Vervaeke. Standing meditation? Sure, we can do standing meditation. Let me just think about what's a good standing meditation. Oh, I have a good meditation for y'all. Okay. So, this is going to be a good one, okay? It's a different kind of meditation. So what I want y'all to do is slouch. Okay, so I want you to adopt a posture like a shrimp. So curved back. So just slouch into your chair. Really slouch into it. And now, close your eyes. And what I want you to do, that's so uncomfortable. Breathe while slouching. Eyes closed. And what do you notice? How does the breath feel? Right? So just sit with that feeling for a moment. Feel all the parts of your body that feel constrained and restricted. The breath feels difficult. It feels heavy. It certainly isn't relaxing. And notice what you want to do. And now go ahead and let your body guide you as you breathe. If your body tells you to sit up straight, sit up straight. If your body tells you to slouch further, slouch further. Follow your body. Chances are you'll sit up straight, and you'll even feel it in your neck, in your shoulders. And now breathe. Feel how much better it is. How freely the air moves in. And now what I want y'all to do is you may even notice that your feet are interfering in some way. And so try a different posture. So as you sit, there are certain things that you can do. What can you do with your legs that'll help you breathe more? Right? And so this is what I want y'all to understand. You can open your eyes. You remember how it felt to breathe when you were slouching? And like how much better it feels to sit up straight? Like it feels so different. And yet you breathe like that all day long. Your breathing is constricted all day long, and you're not even aware of it. You've grown so accustomed to a restricted breath that you don't even realize it. It's like you haven't showered for a year and your BO is so bad and you're not even aware of it. And people wonder why we feel tired all the time. It starts with breath. Every breath is a chore for you. Your body's not getting what it needs. Right? But we go on doing it. And then we're so confused. So sit up straight when you're working. Or go for a walk. Or stand. Pace. And what you'll notice is that your breath will be better. And as your breath becomes better, like so many things will be easier. Right now, if you slouch when you sit down, there's back problems and all that crap. But it's almost like there's a 5% global debuff that you're dealing with. And once you start breathing properly, you're going to have a 5% global buff. It's not like that transformative. It's not like you're going to wake up the next day and you're going to be like, I can run a marathon. No. You're not going to be able to run a marathon after sitting up straight. But it'll help a little bit. And that 10% swing may be everything that you need to start moving your life in the right direction. It's so restrictive to slouch. Sit up straight. Feel your body. Feel the signals it's telling you. The tightness in certain places. It naturally makes you want to move. So listen to it. What do you want to do with your neck? Listen to it. So this is the last thing that I'll say for today's meditation. I know it's weird. Dr. K, we only meditated for 15 seconds. You do this technique and discover. So here's what people think. Should I meditate while standing up? Should I meditate while sitting up straight? Should. Nothing in the meditative tradition is born of the concept of should. Should. Should implies a global degree of correctness. The recommendations from the tradition of meditation are born of experience. You sit and you'll see yourself. You try slouching and meditate. And then sit up straight and meditate. You tell me which one's better. So if you have any question about meditation, should I do this? Is it okay to do this? Should I meditate while high? Should I not meditate while high? You do both properly, and then you decide. The challenge, especially when it comes to substances, is that a lot of people can't meditate unless they are high because they haven't trained their mind well enough. And in the same way, even with slouching, we can sit up straight for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, and you can notice the difference. But building up the stamina to be able to meditate for an hour in lotus pose, Padmasana, is physically not possible for some people. So you have to build up that strength. You know what the right answer is. You just have to build up the strength to be able to do that. And once you do that, you'll discover so many more things. Then the door is really open to understand what meditation has to offer. Wow, USS Cheesy Bread, thank you so much for the $1,000 donation. We really, really appreciate it. Should you meditate on an empty stomach? This is exactly what I'm saying. Meditate on a full stomach, meditate on an empty stomach, and meditate when, a couple hours after eating to where your stomach is neither full nor empty. And then you tell me which one is ideal. So USS Cheesy Bread says, love you, Dr. K. Truly appreciate the good you put into the world. You've helped me more than I can put into words. Well, you're most welcome. And thank you so much for paying it forward. Namaste. USS Cheesy Bread. Right? Thank you very much. And with that $1,000, we hope to help many more people. So thank you very much. In terms of meditating on a full stomach, empty stomach, that's also where what people discovered is that meditating with different amounts of food creates different states of mind. So one state of mind is the food coma, and it's very hard to meditate in the food coma, which is immediately after having had a high, usually glycemic index meal, right? So you experiment yourself, and then you see kind of what works for you. Okay, so that's wraps for today. And thank you once again to the Cheesy Bread and the anonymous donations. We really appreciate it. All of our, just to kind of remind people that in Mental Health May, we're focusing on mental health, and all of our Prime subs go to the foundation. All of our subs and donations from the Streamlabs charity page all go to building mental health resources for y'all. So that's what we're kind of putting that money towards. !MHM to get a link. So a couple of Discord events. So there's a sleeping event going on, and that may relate to people who have difficulty falling asleep. So final lecture is tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central. We have a Saturday check-in at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. So we have a Clean Your Room Together event going on. So clean your room every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sometimes you have to do it multiple times a week. Shocking. So we've got bot-hosted lobbies for studying as well, for those of y'all that have not graduated and still have finals and things. So if you need a little bit of an environmental change to help you study, hopefully our Discord bots can help you. And we also have bot-guided meditations for focus and ADHD and all kinds of other stuff. So if y'all are trying to develop a meditation practice, be sure to check that out. Last thing is, so we get a lot of requests for people who are trying to adjust to things. And so one thing that we've found is, people will ask, like we had a question today about, I'm worried about making friends after graduating from college and as I move into the workplace and become an adult, or people are thinking about how to adjust to, how to adjust to being a college student, or maybe some of y'all are graduating and about to move into the next phase of your life and you're trying to think about, how do I manage this change? So there's some really interesting research that was done by a guy named Irvin Yalom. And what Irvin Yalom essentially discovered is that when human beings share problems and work on them together, they actually perform better than if they were working on them on their own. And so Yalom actually came up with 11 or 12, I think, factors that sort of lead to success within groups. And so we've actually adopted some of those principles when we built our group coaching program. So what we've really found is that sometimes people are just going through a particular experience, which is like part of life and kind of developmentally appropriate, but they still have questions about it, right? Like even though everyone goes to college, or not everyone goes to college, or everyone graduates from college, or not everyone graduates from college, even though it's a very normal experience, it's the kind of thing where sometimes it can really help to have someone facilitate that experience for you, help you understand how that's affecting you, and to help you manage some of the stresses around those kinds of transitions. So if you're someone who's falling into that camp, I'd highly, highly recommend group coaching, because it's going to be a place where you can get together with other people where y'all are sort of having kind of a shared experience or shared struggle. Some of you may be able to provide some amount of guidance. Some of you may be looking for guidance. So it's kind of like a group. It's like a party, right? It's like kind of like D&D, where you've got a bunch of different people in there, but you all have kind of a common goal. And it's facilitated by one of our expert coaches who is sort of adept at helping y'all gain skills, sort of develop healthy goals, facilitate discussion that leads to understanding and like emotional development. And so when you kind of go through all of these things, what you're sort of end up with is this challenging situation becomes a really strong opportunity for you to grow as a person. And you also sort of adapt to your circumstances, hopefully in a healthy way. And we tend to see good outcomes in terms of group coaching, in terms of people feeling like they have more direction in life. They feel more confident about themselves. We also see like improvements in kind of mental health metrics and stuff like that. So if y'all are sort of interested in kind of working with a group of people to tackle particular problems and sort of think through things that are happening to you in your life, I'd highly recommend group coaching. Has the added benefit of also having a skills building component, which some coaches do more formally than others. But what we've sort of found is that people who participate in group coaching for an extended period of time, they get more adept at listening. So they become good listeners and like good at like interacting with other people. So like, when do I speak? When do they speak? How do I listen? How do I ask insightful questions? How do I help my group members? How do I build relationships? How do I learn how to trust? Because all that kind of stuff happens in group coaching. And the challenge is that some of that stuff is tricky in personal coaching, because in personal coaching, your coach is going to be like, working with you. You're the beneficiary of that. You're the recipient of that, but you're not going to quite learn quite as much as you would in group coaching from a skills building standpoint. So if that's interesting to you all, definitely check out group coaching. Who are we rating, chat? What brand is the t-shirt? I don't know. I can't see the back. Gorp? You want to play some Dota? Raid Amber Heard? Is she streaming? Mitch? We can raid Mitch. So let's raid Mitch, because we've got... I really support Mitch's like developing music, right? So like I think Mitch is, what I really appreciate about him is that he makes music, and I think he's still, so he like makes music and plays WoW. And I really, really appreciate him for that. So our Anonymix, thank you so much for the donation. We really, really appreciate the $200 donation. Thanks for your great work. I'm trying to a donation meditation, donating money and paying attention to see how good it feels. That's great. I hope you learned something. And also, I'm glad that that's coming from you. And, I don't think anyone else needs to do that, but I really appreciate it. And I hope that, you've had a positive experience from that donation. So thank you very much. And we'll see y'all hopefully on Wednesday, maybe Thursday. So stay tuned.